Saxophonists complain a lot about reeds, blaming them for problems of poor intonation and bad tone quality. But is it possible the problem lies with the saxophonist? Is it possible we're to blame? No, it's the reeds that are bad. Hi, and welcome to the Saxophone Academy. I'm Dr. Wally Wallace, and if you're interested in saxophone masterclasses and product reviews, please do subscribe. And in the comments below, let me know what are your favorite and your least favorite reeds. And don't forget to hit the like button. Studies have shown that hitting that little button can improve your reed performance by up to 30%. Now today we're talking about bad reeds, some of the most common problems I see with reeds, with beginning players and even some advanced players. So let's dive in and talk about bad reeds. Many moons ago, I was a middle school band director, and occasionally I'd try to help a young saxophonist or clarinet player diagnose a problem, and I would pry the reed off their mouthpiece, and much to my horror, I would find swamp reed. You'd pull it off the mouthpiece, and on the back you'd see things, bad things. I've seen bad things, man, that should never be on the back of the reed, and moisture is the biggest culprit. Now, health and hygiene issues aside, swamp reeds sound bad. When your reed gets moist and stays moist for a long period of time, the fibers start to break down and get kind of mushy. And the problem is heard in the tone quality, intonation, and response. A swamp reed that's been wet and damp for too long has a very dull quality. It doesn't project very well. The low end especially will really start to suffer and generally sounds icky throughout the range. Now with young players, the most common reason for swamp reed is simply leaving the reed on the mouthpiece when they're done. They stick the whole kit and caboodle inside the case, close the case, and it's a warm, dark environment, and then gross things happen. We need to make sure our reeds dry out mostly, if not completely. We'll touch on that in a second. The other big cause of swamp reed is trying to keep your reeds moist in between playing, controlling the humidity, but doing it incorrectly. Now, I have some friends that are smarty pants and great players, and they buy different mechanisms to keep the reeds at a constant humidity. The thinking is they'll last longer and sound better if the reeds don't dry out completely, and they try to keep them at a constant level of moisture. The problem is that's not always easy to do. Van Doren makes a hydro case, D'Addario makes little packs with wet naps that control the humidity. I have friends that buy cigar humidors, and even in college we used to make our own reed boxes out of Tupperware, pantyhose, and rock salt to try to keep the reeds moist. You can add a little bit of water. The problem is, if you don't keep that at a good, constant source of humidity, things can go bad fast, mainly mold. I've had friends that have ruined entire boxes, sometimes multiple boxes of reeds, by having them go moldy or just get mushy and sound gross. In my experience, after decades of experimenting with humidity control and just letting them dry out completely, I really prefer my reeds to dry out completely. I find they play better and for longer. Now it's true, when your reed does dry out completely, the tip will warp ever so slightly. It's not a big deal in my opinion. I found over the years I can simply re-wet the reed either in water or just in my own saliva, and then it straightens the tip out and it plays just fine. But more importantly, the reeds that I let dry out completely tend to last longer, keep more of the color and vibrancy in their sound, and the response stays better for a lot longer. So if you do decide to try the humidity control things, be careful and take it easy, but my recommendation, just let them dry out. I've done it for years and been very pleased with the results. The golden reed. You ever pull a reed out of the box and you play it, and it's great. It's perfect. You play on it and all of a sudden you sound like Paul Desmond and Stan Getz had a baby, and that baby is your tone. You sound good throughout the registers, it responds perfectly, it's the perfect balance of resistance and free blowing. You impressed your friends with it and you can't wait to record on it, and you play it, and you play it, and you play it. Well, now you're wondering, well, Dr. Wally, what's the problem? What's the problem with a great reed? Why not go for the golden reed? The problem is it's a siren song, luring you into a very bad habit. So you play on the reed for a full day, maybe multiple days, maybe a full week, maybe a couple of weeks, and everything's going fine. Then one day you're in wind ensemble rehearsal, packing up at the end of rehearsal, and you go to put on your mouthpiece cap and you smack your reed while you're making eyeballs at your best gal over there in the clarinet section, and the reed splits. You've killed it. No problem, you think. I've got a box of reeds, and any box that has a reed that good will have 9 other good reeds in it. Oh boy, now we find the problem. You pull out the next reed, it's bad. You pull out the next reed, it's worse. You pull out another reed, it's worse than before. You start to panic. Flop sweat kicks in, and your heart is racing, and you don't know if you're going to make it through the rehearsal without finding a decent reed. You don't have 9 reeds left in the box. You have 9 2x4s that aren't going to play. Well, what happened? What's the problem? The problem is, as you were playing that one reed over and over and over again, it got softer and softer and softer. The fibers broke down a little bit. It got easier to play. It took less embouchure control and air to get it to work. As the reed got softer and started to decay, your embouchure went right along with it. Then you put on a new reed, which isn't actually any stronger than the golden reed was to start with, but it feels like a 2x4 in your mouth. Your embouchure has been deconditioned and your airstream has likely gotten lazy in the process. It's a bad combination that has struck many a player. Back when I was younger, it was the bane of my existence. The golden reed sounds and plays great to begin with, but it's a bad trap. So the solution is easy. It's reed rotation. Don't just break in one reed. Break in 4 to 10 at a time. If you're a younger player, 4 reeds at a time is perfectly fine. I do 10 alto reeds and it lasts me a long time. The secret is, after you do the break-in process, and I've talked about the break-in in a previous video, I'll put a link below, is to rotate the reeds. Don't play on any single reed for longer than one practice session or a rehearsal. Then rotate to the next reed and give each reed a day or 2 off to dry out and rust the fibers. They'll all last longer, they'll all sound better for it, and you won't run into the horrible problem of the golden reed. When a smuggler doesn't make good on his debts, the wise HUTT will send a bounty hunter after him and have him encased in carbonite. It's a great way to transport that smuggler and keep them safe and secure. You should not stick your reeds in any strange substance. Your reed is not Han Solo, even if you put a little vest on it. It's cute, but it still doesn't make your reed Han Solo. Smugglers, sure, put them in carbonite. Your reeds, don't stick them in any kind of weird solution. Although it seems to be a lot less common, I still know some saxophone teachers and older players that tend to stick their reeds in bottles of gunk. They'll stick it in water. That's problematic because you can grow bacteria. So they'll get a little pill bottle, fill it with water and a little bit of Listerine or some other antiseptic, trying to keep the bacterial growth at bay, and they keep their reeds submerged in water. Well, much like swamp reed, the fibers are going to break down faster, get super waterlogged and soggy, and the problem really starts to present itself after a couple of days. After a couple of days of being completely submerged, the reeds really start to suffer. You'll notice the first thing that goes is the low-end response. It gets a very dull, thuddy kind of articulation, and thud is not a sound we want to make on our saxophone. Then the reed starts to lose color in all the registers. It just has a dull feel to it. Yes, it might feel very easy to play right out of the bottle in the goop and right onto your mouthpiece because it's already wet, but at what cost, Johnny? At what cost? So as I've said before, and I'll say it again, just let your reeds dry out. Don't keep it in any kind of weird solution. Then you may be wondering, well, what do I keep my reeds in, Dr. Wally? I'm glad you asked. I recommend you keep your reeds in a, wait for it, reed case. They come in all kinds of shapes, colors, and sizes. You can buy them for $10. You can buy them for $50 with fancy wood engraved ones. It really doesn't matter as long as it's holding your reeds securely, not keeping them moist so they'll rot and get swamp reed, and protecting them from chips and dings so when they're rolling around inside your case, they don't get damaged. And as a matter of fact, if you play Van Doren or D'Addario, those little plastic holders they come in, they're fine. They really do protect the reed. The only problem with that is you can lose track of which is which reed. So just number them to make sure you're rotating them the entire time. We'll talk more about reed cases and some of my favorite new reed cases on the market in an upcoming video. But in the meantime, just keep them dry and safe, and don't try to encase them in carbonite or any other kind of weird liquid. Now we're going to talk more about reed problems and the horrible things that can happen to your reeds in Volume 2 of Bad Reeds, and we're also going to get into adjustment and management of reeds in a future video. I'll actually bust out the Reed Geek, my reed knife, and if I can find some reed rush, I think there's some actually that grows by the lake near my house. I'll pick some reed rush and show you how to adjust reeds with those things. In the meantime, though, let me know in the comments below the worst reeds and why they are so bad for you. I want to hear your horror stories. Make me feel better about myself and my reeds. I will see you very soon, and in the meantime, go practice.